managed to get most of it on the paper this time. Good job, buddy.
Let's be honest, babe, it's not a very high bar to clear.
I didn't know any of you were still alive. What was it like to lose everything in the day?
Okay, this does not look like this is gonna end well. For you guys.
What's Superman like?
He sees the good in everyone. And I see the truth.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. James Gunn and DC dropped a brand new Supergirl trailer. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references here to the Man of Tomorrow comic book that it's based on, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I know there's going to be all kinds of questions about Jason Momoa's Lobo and what his future is in the DCU, what's happening with Brainiac during the events of this movie, how does it set up Superman 2, Man of Tomorrow, so we'll try to address all that during the video. Jason Momoa using Lobo's powers of regeneration to regenerate himself from the DCEU as Aquaman into the DCU as Lobo. Yet another confluence of all my interests all aligning together because Jason Momoa played Khal Drogo on the original Game of Thrones series, and Millie Alcock was actually cast as Supergirl after James Gunn got the idea when he saw her during House of the Dragon Season 1 as the young version of Rhaenyra.
That little miniature human being from House of the Dragon.
Their characters in the Game of Thrones universe live during completely different parts of the timeline, though, so they never actually met inside the Game of Thrones universe on screen. But it does kind of feel like a spiritual Game of Thrones reunion. Starting at the beginning of the trailer, you actually see her wake up on her spaceship. Crypto actually starts the record, and it's the Blondie Call Me song that plays across the entire trailer. As you see him stumble across all the bottles, like it's just a complete mess, basically a disaster site, and he walks over the newspaper with Superman after an adventure of him saving this nuclear reactor from exploding recently. Zoom and enhance, it seems like this is meant to be after the events of the Superman movie. You also notice the smaller article about Supergirl saving cats out of trees. That's a reference to Christopher Reeve's Superman saving cats out of trees. In the context of the story, though, when this picks up, it's just meant to be a reference to her not being as great as Superman. Like she hasn't been doing as great deeds as Superman, so people don't view her in the same way. Throughout the actual comic book, when she's traveling through space looking for Krem, she actually runs into a lot of bad situations because people absolutely hate Superman because he's been putting the beat down on people all over the universe. Maybe they'll change that a little bit for this movie because this is meant to be a much younger version of Superman. So in the comic book, he'd actually been active for a much longer period. So he'd had way more adventures across space and the cosmos.
You managed to get most of it on the paper this time.
But I do love the way that they have this sly reference to Christopher Reeve's Superman that they bake into this. Of course it is the Daily Planet, as in he's going to the bathroom on the newspaper of Superman's article. The whole reason why she's hungover is because they are in a system with a red sun and she is partying, as they mentioned at the end of the Superman movie. When you actually see her at the rest stop here waiting for the taxi service, this is after I think Krem has stolen her spaceship, and the reason why she needs it, because she can normally fly, is because they're still under a red sun, so she doesn't have her powers the same way. There is a certain point during the trailer where you actually see them make it back near a yellow sun and she gets her powers back and she starts flying around. Also when you see her using her heat vision. That's actually a pretty good way of tracking the trailer and where they are in the cosmos, because for a lot of the story in the comics, they spent a lot of it near red suns. It's only for a little while that they're under yellow suns and she actually has her powers. For a lot of the story, when they're chasing after Krem across the cosmos trying to catch up to him, they're on this taxi-type spaceship, and I think that's what this one is meant to be. What they'll probably do is condense the timeline from the actual comic. The actual comic had them traveling across space for many months, like a very long travel. There's another minor change from the comic book when she starts celebrating her birthday like she does in the comic. Instead of 21 like it is in the comic, it's 23 during this. Technically, she's meant to be older than Superman, but chronologically, like her actual age number is younger than Superman. This is just part of relativity and the way their pods were traveling through space. Zoom and enhance on the jukebox. There are a couple Easter eggs for some of the songs here. There's a Mighty Crabjoys song. James Gunn loves his fake bands. I'm kind of expecting the Mighty Crabjoys to show up in every single DC project in the background in some way. They're actually Superman's favorite band in context of this new DCU Superman. Loves his punk ska. Speaking of all the punk rock references in the first Superman movie, there's a Teddy Bear's Punk Rocker song on here, which is also a callback to the theme that kindness is the new punk rock. Some of that theme bleeds over into the Supergirl movie with her character too. There's Dance This Mess Around, and then there's the Blondie's Call Me, which plays across the entire trailer. There are a lot of scenes in a couple different bars where you see her get into fights with the space pirates that Krem joins up with during the movie. I think that's meant to be the group of space pirates. In the original comic, the way that Ruthie tells it, they had many adventures, many fights, many bar fights throughout their journeys, so they'll also probably condense that as well too, like a couple bar fights. We get a scene of Argo City. This is the dome that Zor-El puts over it after the destruction of Krypton that helps it survive Krypton's actual destruction. He's being played, like I said, by David Krumholtz. This is basically all of them rushing as Krypton is about to break apart into a bunch of different pieces. Superman's pod, like I said, has already been fired by Jor-El to Earth.
What was it like to lose everything in the day?
We get a scene of Ruthie, who looks a little bit different from her comic book appearance, a little bit younger, but she still has that giant sword that she carries around throughout the comic book. The whole idea is the sword is meant to be the reward for whoever takes her bounty to go kill Krem. So when Supergirl says that she'll do it, she says that she'll give Supergirl the sword after she sees Krem's dead body. When the movie picks up, Supergirl is on Ruthie's planet celebrating her 21st birthday by getting drunk with Krypto there, takes Krypto along with her because Krypto is her dog, not Superman's dog. He was just dog sitting for her during the events of the Superman movie. Ruthie's planet has a red sun, which Superman referenced at the end of the Superman movie. Supergirl likes going to planets with red suns so that she can get drunk. They can get drunk on Earth. It just takes a lot of booze. At the bar, while she's living it up, she meets Ruthie, a young girl trying to avenge her father's death at the hands of Krem of the Yellow Hills, the main villain of the movie, played by Matthias Schoenert. You've probably seen him in a couple other things. Supergirl tries to avoid the responsibility, doesn't want to get mixed up in it, but Ruthie inadvertently gets her involved when Krem follows Ruthie, who's following Supergirl as she's trying to go back to Earth. Krem, thinking Ruthie has hired Supergirl to kill him, and because she and Krypto don't have powers right now under the red sun, Krem is able to wound them and steal her spaceship. Supergirl makes Ruthie think that Krypto is going to die from Krem's poisoned arrow that he gets shot with, they both get shot with. And the only way to save his life, Krypto's life, is to find Krem and get the antidote. So the stakes of the movie, you're led to believe, are Krypto's life. Then to make an Avatar: The Last Airbender Marvel comp, the movie turns into a Thor Ragnarok life-changing field trip across space to different planets as they chase Krem down in the band of space pirates that he joins up with, named the Barboned Brigands. Their ship also named the Bonnie Prince Charlie. Just a coincidence that my name is also Charlie. What Ruthie learns is that Supergirl tricked her, never needed her help to find Krem, like she could have found him all by herself if she really needed to find him and get the antidote. Krypto was fine the whole time, he was never in danger of dying, and Supergirl had used this whole life-changing field trip to find Krem as a way to help Ruthie deal and process the grief and trauma of losing her father the way that Supergirl had to do after she lost her family in Argo City in Krypton. And during the movie, Krem is meant to be the worst of the worst, like the most despicable kind of villain in the DC universe. He's a former King's agent from Ruthie's homeworld whose job was to travel around the countryside searching for and killing disloyal subjects. When she says Krypton did not die in a day, the gods are not that kind, that's a line taken directly out of the comic book. When you see Supergirl with what looks like all these other Kryptonians, I don't think she's on Krypton. I actually think this is her on Argo City, which is set after the days of Krypton's initial destruction. Part of her really important character arc during the series is processing her grief over losing her people, her planet, and her family. What you find out is that during Krypton's initial destruction, when the planet is in the middle of tearing itself apart, Zor-El, her father, played by David Krumholtz, erects a shield over Argo City, the city that she actually lives in with her family. Manages to keep that alive after Krypton itself is destroyed and breaks apart, and Superman's pod, like Jor-El has sent Superman's pod to Earth already. Shortly after, she starts to notice that people around her, other Kryptonians, are starting to get cancer at an increasing rate, and more people are dying.
Krypton didn't die in a day. The gods are not that kind.
They find out that the asteroid of Krypton that they're living on has been irradiated, basically turning into a version of kryptonite, because big kryptonite twist, talking about Superman lore here. Slowly begins killing off all the survivors of Krypton in Argo City, so she has to watch her mother slowly die of cancer. It's very traumatic. Then eventually the same thing happens to her father, but as he's dying, like in the process, he creates her pod and then sends her to Earth. So it's a way more PTSD traumatic version of Supergirl's backstory than you saw, say, with like Melissa in the Arrowverse. This is why I think these flashback scenes of what looks like Krypton is actually Argo City. In the casket here is her dead mother, and they're burying her. Them wearing the white also feels like a callback to the Christopher Reeve Superman movies too, in the Helen Slater classic Supergirl movie. We will see if they gave her a cameo in this movie. I haven't heard about any special cameos like that from legacy characters, but they did a lot of those during the Superman movie, so why wouldn't they also do it during the Supergirl movie? So we're getting way more Kryptonian history and backstory and lore, even though it's super messed up the way that she's experiencing and remembering these things that we didn't get during the Superman movie. We got a little bit of Jor-El's message, but they didn't dive too deeply into that yet. During the original comic book, Zor-El also references Jor-El and Superman's pod, so maybe we'll also get some Superman flashbacks too, some Jor-El flashbacks. We'll see. When you see her screaming in space here, that means she has her powers back because there's a yellow sun behind her. You can see in the comic, she actually flies directly into a yellow sun and just sits there, just absorbing power, but also just letting all of her anger out and frustration, screaming so that nobody can hear because she is inside a sun. She actually displays some really crazy powers in the comic book. She takes some red kryptonite pills. We'll see if they actually added that stuff to the actual movie. It'd be pretty cool. If you haven't read it, the artwork is beautiful. It's also a good way of differentiating her powers and making her feel different from Superman, even though technically their powers are the exact same. We finally see Krem's space pirates that he joins up with. I'm assuming that's who they are. They look a little bit like Guardians of the Galaxy Ravagers too, even though, like I said, James Gunn did not direct the film. There's a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy vibes in the background for some of these characters. I believe this is actually meant to be Krem with the spikes all over his face. Like, they make him look way more gruesome than he is in the comic book. Ruthie starts asking her questions about Superman, your cousin. Does he have powers like you? What's he like? And Supergirl basically explains Superman, his whole no-kill ethos to her. We finally see her get her powers back because she has her heat vision. This ship that's crashing, I believe, is meant to be the Space Pirates ship. This is probably from the end of the movie when she takes them all on. It winds up being this big battle royale where she takes on all the space pirates, all their weapons at full power, all by herself, but she's meant to be fully juiced up, so she's able to actually go toe-to-toe with them. There are a couple surprises during that we don't see during the trailer here. Like, I don't know if Comet is going to appear in this movie, so we will see if the horse is in the movie. This scene of her being sad over Krypto is probably after he gets shot with Krem's arrow, or whatever they substitute for the arrow. We finally get our look at Jason Momoa's main man Lobo, just a real quick shot of him in the trailer here. My assumption is that he has something to do with the space pirates and Krem that are coming after her. Maybe he's either leading the space pirates, or the space pirates hire him, or Krem hires him to get Supergirl.
Well, I originally thought I was going to be playing Lobo in the very beginning because I got called in. I auditioned for Batman, and I almost didn't do it.
We could talk about his Lobo all day long. Jason Momoa himself has been a lifelong fan of Lobo. He's wanted to play him since he was a little kid. Even when Zack Snyder first cast him in the DCEU as Aquaman, when he was auditioning, he actually said that he thought that he was auditioning for Lobo because they didn't tell him who he was auditioning for. So when Zack Snyder called him to tell him they got the Aquaman part, he asked Zack Snyder if it was for Lobo, who got really confused. Like, no, Lobo isn't part of the DCEU. You're going to be Aquaman. Which he was totally happy to do at the time. Cut to many years later, right after James Gunn announced that he got the job being the new Kevin Feige of DC, Jason Momoa texted him saying, "You told me that I could be Lobo," and then he responded saying, "Yes, I always did say that you'd be a great Lobo," and basically started the conversations of him actually playing the character in a movie. He's actually one of the big changes from the adaptation of the Man of Tomorrow comic book. He's not part of that original Supergirl story. Totally happy to have him on board, though, just because he works so well in a Superman, Supergirl type of story. Kryptonians are one of his specialities. Because of the way his powers work, he's one of the few characters that can go toe-to-toe with them. Based on the way they're hyping him up in the movie here, just the way they're presenting him, pretty easy assumption to make that they will bring him back in other movies, maybe even his own solo movie too, because that's James Gunn's whole thing, is doing weird kinds of risky movies that you normally wouldn't see from people. So a really hardcore rated R Lobo movie might be on the menu in the future. Some of you also probably clocked this too, but zoom in and enhance, doesn't it look like she stole Star-Lord's Walkman and headphones from the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie? Also because they used the Blondie Call Me song, 1980 song, listening to classic 80s music like Peter Quill does. And speaking of music, the composer for the movie is Ramin Djawadi, who did the music for Game of Thrones, he did Westworld, he's done a bunch of other stuff as well too, so glad to see him doing this. When you listen to the Supergirl theme, it sounds very sci-fi because this is meant to be a sci-fi space-based movie compared to the Superman movie, which was set on Earth. Does that not feel very Thor Ragnarok coded? Imagine Thor Ragnarok in the DC universe just with slightly less of that Taika Waititi sense of humor, like less humor overall because the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow story is a little more somber. Think of Jason Momoa's Lobo as being the Hulk in this equation. We have a Hulk, and his name is Lobo. So a big part of this movie is pushing into the more cosmic DCU, like pushing beyond the boundaries of Earth. We're going to get a little bit more of that vibe during the Green Lantern HBO series, but that is also mostly a terrestrial, Earth-based series. There'll only be a little bit of cosmic stuff. Supergirl is a flat-out cosmic movie. Then the scene of her with the weapon going after all these people is from that final battle on the spaceship after it crashes, like this final big battle in the movie. During the title screen, when her logo reveals, obviously it's meant to be the same logo as Superman's logo. But I think the idea is that these things that are swirling around it are meant to be planets because most of the movie is them traveling across space through different systems looking for Krem. When it actually comes to setting up Superman 2 Man of Tomorrow, because that's going to be like the next real big movie that's connected to it, Clayface comes out after Supergirl, but I don't think that's going to be connected to Supergirl in any big way. What they'll probably do is there'll be some kind of post-credit scene or some moment at the end of the movie that references Brainiac coming for Earth or what's happening with the Salvation Planet and Superman teaming up with Lex Luthor. Just some nod to that because of the big problem of Brainiac showing up. The whole idea is that Brainiac was revealed as the main villain for the movie, so at some point at the beginning, Brainiac will be too big of a problem for Superman to solve on his own or even with the help of the Justice Gang, so they need to get Lex Luthor's help, and he is technically the Man of Tomorrow. I think the idea is the title is meant to be both a reference to Superman, Man of Tomorrow, because that's the name of a Superman comic book, but it's also a reference to Lex Luthor as well, too.
Enough to give me my freedom.
Maybe Supergirl also winds up coming back to Earth and helping them out with Brainiac too. There were some slight references to that, but nothing James Gunn has said has actually confirmed that, so no idea what Supergirl is doing after the end of the Supergirl movie. In the comic book, there's a time jump where she comes back to visit an older version of Ruthie, but they don't really tell you what she's done after the end of the main part of the timeline in the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic book. My other assumption is they changed the title of the Supergirl movie from Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow with the subtitle because they were going to use Man of Tomorrow for the Superman 2 movie. Like, okay, we're just going to switch it to this other movie, so we need to shorten the Supergirl title to just Supergirl, which they did the same thing with the first Superman movie with David Cornsman. It used to be Superman Legacy, then they just shortened it to Superman. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and because there is so much stuff happening during the footage, if there's any Easter eggs or references that you spotted that I didn't talk about during the video, just write them below in the comments and I'll add them to my future bonus videos. There's supposed to be a couple other real big trailers before the end of the year. There are a couple of series that are starting. I'll be doing videos for everything. We will see if Marvel decides to drop an Avengers Doomsday trailer. Whatever winds up getting released, of course I will do videos for it, so don't worry. Make sure you enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that stuff. Everybody click here for all my DC videos and learn about that big Warner Brothers, Netflix, Paramount fight that's going on over the company. And click here for all my other Superman and Supergirl videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.